All right, here we go. Neuroscience for conquering burnout and distractions. So you may have heard, but people are really stressed out here in America. And lots of different groups are taking surveys around stress. Um, but the American Psychological Association does a lot of very interesting stress in America surveys. And the the numbers have just been going steadily up. We see them really steady in the 40s in the OOs, then they get up to the 50s and 60s by the teens, and then here in the 2020s, they're in the 80s and even 90s. A lot of folks, of course, want to blame the pandemic, but in 2019, a different group that surveys specifically work stress, the work stress survey in the APA work is actually a subset of a larger Stress in America survey. But a different group that only looks at work stress said that 94% of American workers reported feeling highly stressed at work. And that was in 2019, so before the pandemic. And, there's a lot of different talk of like what's wrong with our society these days, but I'm going to invite you to consider that there's something really powerful and specific going on around multitasking. Now, multitasking is a superpower that humans have that no other animals in the animal kingdom really have. It's not actually the ability to do two things at once. It's the ability to rapidly shift our attention back and forth so that we can manage multiple activities at once. And using that superpower, to shift our focus a few hundred times a day, totally cool. A few thousand times a day, not a big deal. A few million times a day, now we're in trouble. We're overdoing it. So what happens as we spend so much time in task switching? We burn away our energy, our strength, and our stamina faster than any brain activity. And in fact, the data shows that stress and anxiety are on the rise. Heart attack rates are on the rise for the first time in 30 years. Stroke rates are on the rise for the first time in 30 years. Blood pressure is up. Depression rates are up. So we are, in fact, imperiling both our physical and mental health with all of this task switching. I didn't tell you I was going to ruin your day today, but we're going to ruin your day. Yay! Hope that's okay with you. So now to understand how we got here, I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson. And I just have to ask, Megan, is this fun for you to kind of like get a little blast from the past seat again?
Yeah. Was that picture in your presentation last time? I think it's a different one.
No, it was there, but that's the human brain, right? So, yeah, no, I've learned over many years that it requires a lot of repetition for people to really take in these ideas. So I'm always really curious when someone in the room it's their second time or third time seeing the material. I'm like, ooh, what do you remember? What looks weird to you? Anyway, so here's our history. Here's the beginning of our history lesson. So SpaceX was a research and consulting firm that focused on technology and productivity and really cataloged how people were showing up for productivity in the workplace from the 1980s through the early 2000s. And they actually helped a lot of very famous companies, adopt Office email in the 1990s. And it was a big deal, right? Everybody was like, oh, we're going to do this amazing technological breakthrough called email. Now, something they did not expect is by the early 2000s, they noticed a new phenomenon, which is that because email comes in consistently across the day instead of one or two deliveries of snail mail each day, the actual experience of the interruptions from emails was stealing people's time, because just the experience of being interrupted in the middle of their task, feeling the urge to respond or even not respond, just read it and say, oh, I'll get back to that person and then come back to the original task, was stealing so much more time than anyone ever imagined it would steal. And SpaceX was able to identify, using their various formulas that they'd been using for many, many years, that the average American employee was losing 2 hours per day to distraction and distraction recovery just because of the shift from emails, from snail mail delivered once or twice a day to emails coming in across the day. Now, unfortunately, email is only the beginning. So we have Facebook and Twitter, we have social media. Then social media used to live on our computers. Remember those days, some of us? Then Apple launches the iPhone. right? Then Google launches the Android and Apple launches the App Store. And so suddenly we're able to get social media on our phones. And we really start to migrate away from the simple phone that could do mostly, the simple cell phone that was just mostly calls and occasional texts to the full smartphone experience. By 2015, the vast majority of Americans have a smartphone, and Edward G. Brown estimates that the interruptions across the variety of distractions that people were experiencing, both work-related and non-work-related, were stealing 6.2 hours per worker per day. And that was 9 years ago. So more things happen. Slack launches, Microsoft Teams launches. In 2017, TikTok opens in the US. By 2018, a time management app called Rescue Time publishes research based on its 50,000 users, showing that the average American, it's deceptive to say actually working, or it's not quite specific enough for my taste. What I should have said here is the average American spends 72 minutes per day not having someone request their attention.
Wow.
So across the whole day, there's only 72 minutes when people aren't receiving a ping, an alert, an email, a question, sitting in a meeting, etc., or more, multiples of those. I believe that number is so much smaller today. That was 6 years ago, and these things are progressive. I believe that number is about 20 minutes today. I don't have the data for it, but I can certainly tell you all the anecdotal evidence of so many people who sit through this talk and go, oh God, it's not even 72 minutes. I wish it were. And then unfortunately, more users, start using more Slack, more Teams, etc. So we've arrived at a pretty dire situation. And the smartphone isn't the only reason that we're here, but it plays a huge role. 47% of Americans admit that they're addicted to their phones. That's enormous because when we study the neuroscience of addiction, which I love to study, one of the features of addictive behavior is internal deception, also known as denial. So the way that we do things so much more compulsively than we actually think we should be doing them, right? The way that our inner systems beat back our rational desires, our rational goals, is that we lie to ourselves. We say, oh, it's not that bad. I only do it a little bit. So for half of America to say, no, I'm addicted, that means it's gotten really, really bad. It's really scary. In 2023, the average American checked their phones 352 times per day. And because I've been doing the research for so long on this, I actually have the study that shows that in 2013, that number was 150 times per day. And 66% of children spend at least 4 hours on a screen each day. Is that number for? Let me see it. What does it say?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you. I had a little Zoom thing that was covering it up, so I was trying to remember if I got it right. Yes, 4. Hooray. And cell phones cause 20% of car accidents, more than 20%. So much fun. Also, I think it's really important to talk about the fact that these issues are progressive across generations. And so the younger people are, the more likely they are to have this experience of physical and mental health compromise because they've been affected by it from earlier stages in their brain development. 46% of Gen Zs who are younger than millennials, 41% of 41% of millennials feel stressed most of the time. You can see here the contrast between Gen Z women and Gen Z men, millennial women and millennial men, and 73% of Gen Z is on TikTok. So I've scared you a lot, and I don't have good news for you yet, but what I do have for you is a little bit of a deeper dive into what are the ingredients that make this happen. It's not just that we're all staring at our smartphones. We all wake up in the morning with that list of things we have to do. We all, sit down at the computer knowing that there's certain things that have to get done. Why? Why is this being stolen from us in such a consistent way? And there's really particular dynamics between people that are happening that I want to help you get wise to. And these are not things that will show up to us in our awareness without an extraordinary amount of research and cataloging. And that's why the research is so useful. before I go into further research, does anybody have more questions? No, everyone's just really depressed.
Yeah, it's very sad. Yes, everyone's very sad and they're sad.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to make you miserable. Okay. Well, I promise you there is light at the end of this tunnel, but we have to go deeper into the ground first. So one of my favorite researchers in this area is a woman named Gloria Mark. She's a professor of informatics at UC Irvine. She really begins to publish data about this starting in 2004. Now, in 2004, we didn't have the same software that could track, what people are doing on their computers and things like that. So she and her grad students actually set up video cameras in people's office places, like places of work. And they watched hours and hours and hours and hours of video of people doing their jobs, and they cataloged all the different ways people were doing their tasks based on the quantitative analysis of these hours and hours of video across many offices. What they were able to discern is that the average screen session length was 2.5 minutes. They actually invented a term that they call work sphere, because here in our modern world, we don't just do one task in a notebook. We don't just do one task in a Microsoft Word document. We're constantly using multiple tools across multiple media to achieve our task success. So Gloria Mark was very insightful, I think, to articulate the difference between moving across media and tools as part of the work sphere of a particular task, right? As opposed to just blaming, like, anytime you pick up your phone or anytime you go to the internet, it's bad. Because often you're on the internet for a good reason. You're Googling an answer that you want to put into an email, that kind of thing. So the average time before people got interrupted from a work sphere in 2004 was 10 minutes, 10.1 minutes. And the percent of interruptions caused by, quote, self-interruption was 44%. And that was a really interesting phenomenon, because people show up at work, they have a list of things they need to do, they start working, and then there was this strange thing where Gloria and her team could point to the fact that people would be working, and then after about 10 minutes, they would just stop. And they would go, oops, I have to do this other thing. And that was something they didn't expect to find, but it was such a predominant behavior that they had to start talking about it. And whether people interrupted themselves or were interrupted by colleagues, they saw, like, a full, leaving the work sphere all the way. They saw that interruption recovery time was about 23 minutes. Now, fast forward 10 years. By now, it's 2014. And the way people get pulled away from entire, task work spheres. Now, remember, there's other interruptions. People knock on your door, no, quick question, blah, 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 blah. Yep, got it. And you keep going, right? This is actually putting everything down, being pulled away. 10 years ago now, you only got to work with minimal interruption for 7.8 minutes before a colleague would pull you away. Now, these are averages, right? So occasionally it's longer or shorter, right? The average work sphere time before you actually experience an internal prompt, right, that seems to come out of nowhere, telling you, I need to put everything down, walk away, and do a different thing, is 8.6 minutes. So if you don't get an interruption from the external world, your body makes one up.
Yep.
Interruption recovery time is 32 to 34 minutes. So that's a 50% increase from 10 years before. And the chance of not resuming your task that day is 30%. Everybody's still very depressed. By 2014,
It's gonna get worse.
What'd you say, Megan?
Brian said, "Is it gonna get worse?"
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think we're here. I think we're, like, the world is on fire. Like, I think we've arrived. So in 2000, so basically in 2014, that's when all the, like, Big Brother software starts to come in. So then Gloria Mark is able to shift her research to observing data on software, and she does some other stuff that's not as interesting for me for this particular presentation. But by 2021, the conservative estimate that she and her colleagues make, and she actually offers in her research compare and contrast numbers with other folks, the conservative estimate is that most people spend about 47 seconds per screen by 2021 before they go, over here. Oh, what about, blah, 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 right? So I really believe that our culture has arrived at a state where we're all a little functionally ADHD, no matter whether or not we got the full diagnosis as kids, right? Um, so this is I hope a revelation as it relates to how teams unknowingly sabotage each other's productivity and focus, right? Because focus and productivity are so linked. Because when someone's not interrupting you, you're actually more likely to interrupt yourself. And then who are you going to go interrupt? Probably someone on your team. First, you'll call the plumber because that's why you needed to do that interruption anyway. But then eventually there is this hunger for both distraction and connection that we're really struggling with as a society. So that's an important piece of all this that I want you guys to be keeping in mind when we start thinking about tools to change it. Now, let's talk about tiny distractions. So this is, again, how your focus, how your time, how your ability to get your work done gets stolen from you by things you did not give your permission to manipulate. You didn't want to be manipulated by all this stuff. It's just happening. So Eric Altman is is a professor at Michigan State who also studies attention and distraction. And he wanted to assess how tiny distractions affect error rates. So he gave 300 participants a very simple task to do that took a few minutes. It had something to do with putting the letters of the word unravel in alphabetical order. He divided this group of 300 people into 3 subgroups. The first group was the control group. They experienced 0 distractions. The second group had one 2.8-second distraction, and the third group had one 4.4-second distraction. Now, before they started the experiment, they hypothesized that there would be no difference in the error rates between group 1 with no distractions and group 2 with a 2.8-second distraction, because they believed that a distraction that small probably wouldn't register very intensely with the brain because, humans are so smart. And that it just wouldn't be such a big deal. And probably the error rates would be very, very close together, if not the same, between the control group and the 2.8-second distraction groups. They were wrong. Turns out that the people who just had a 2.8-second distraction saw that group, their error rates doubled. So even like a super tiny, like, oh, my phone's ringing, let me turn it off. 2.8 seconds just now, right? And the 4.4-second distraction group had error rates tripling. And we all have little 2, 3, 4, 5-second distractions throughout the day. That's just a totally normal experience for people. So as those distractions are coming in, your error rates are going up. You're having to go back to that email, reread it another time, find yet another spelling error, correct yet another grammar thing, right? So this is how our time is getting stolen from us. Whew, scary stuff. Okay, and the obvious solutions seem not to work. 2 professors at Penn State, Mengshi Lau and Sham Sundar, specialize in media and communications, and they put a group of college students through a different, through a study where they wanted to see what would happen if they had some people put their phones on silent or do not disturb, and others with their phones on audio alert or vibration alert, etc. The group with their phones completely on silent and do not disturb actually check their phones more frequently than the other users. Go ahead, Megan.
Ryan just confirmed that is true. She said she has her phone on Do Not Disturb, but she keeps looking at her phone more.
Right now.
Right now.
Because that fear that we're missing something, right? It's not that Maya has lost her ability to make smart choices. It's that our brains as a collective have actually been hacked. We feel urges for things that we did not feel urges for 25 years ago or even 10 years ago. And so it is a constant, is everything okay? Is everything okay? Is everything okay? And you did not sign up for that. No one did. So that's part of what I hope to bring to you guys today is relief to know you're not alone. I know it's really depressing to see all the numbers and all the data, but I want you guys to get that you're really, really, really not alone. So let's talk about the biological phenomena that are happening, because I love being able to say, hey, every human thought, every human behavior, every human experience, every human, engagement is a biological phenomenon, right? There's hormones and electrical impulses that are doing things in your brain in very particular patterns. And we know a lot more than we used to about how those patterns work. So every time we pick up our phones, our brains prepare for a hit of dopamine. Does anybody know what dopamine is? Does anybody want to give a shout?
Compound in the brain that is responsible for joy.
What did he say, Megan?
Chemical compound in the brain that's responsible for joy.
You said joy, just joy, or joy in something else?
Joy, happiness. I believe it's happiness.
Joy, happiness.
Makes you feel good.
It makes you, joy, happiness, excitement. It makes you feel good.
It's the same feeling.
Excellent.
The same feeling. Rachel says the same feeling when you do drugs.
I mean, it is.
I like to use the word pleasure. I like to really tack that word pleasure onto dopamine. We all have very different, we can use there's so many wonderful words for happiness and reward and joy and fun in our culture, in our language. Yay. I like to specifically distinguish dopamine from oxytocin and serotonin. Oxytocin is like the cuddle, warm love, like, hey, sweet love kind of chemical in your body. That's also a source of joy, right? And serotonin is like the well-being, like, hey, everything's cool. We're cool. Everybody's gonna be okay. I'm okay. You're okay. We're okay, right? So I think part of what are you laughing at, Megan?
Brian said, "Oh, Justin has too much of that. That's her husband." I admit.
That is none of it. It's this guy that was.
You answered her question though. So she actually, it was funny. You were talking, and she had asked me the difference. She wanted me to ask you the difference between dopamine and
Serotonin.
I don't even remember which one. Serotonin. And so, but you went into it, so you were good.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, and a lot of times when we're dealing with behavior that seems to spiral out of our control, right? Which, by the way, we could call it compulsion or addiction, right? Not trying to make anybody feel bad here, but there are names for these kinds of repetitive experiences. Usually it's because there's this out of balance experience across the hormones, across the dopamine, the serotonin and the oxytocin, and cortisol and adrenaline. Those hormones are not bad in healthy doses. It's just that things get really wacky, and we'll talk in just a second about how they get wacky. But actually, a study just came out 2 weeks ago. This is what I love about specializing in neuroscience. Just 2 weeks ago, a study came out that showed that, they're always experimenting with rats and addiction. They're always getting rats addicted to heroin and, like they're really trying to figure out, because rat brains and human brains are really interestingly connected. For the first time ever, they found that by giving rats oxytocin dosage, they were able to help those rats break heroin addiction. And for me, I'm someone who has actually been in 12-step recovery myself for 19 years. So I have my own personal experience of addiction and recovery. And what we say in that community, and I totally get that community is not the right community for everybody. And I just think I'm very weird, and that's why I like it. But it was, it was an important early influence on my passion for all this stuff. What we say in that community is the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. We say the opposite of addiction is connection. So connection, oxytocin, the hug, love, cuddle, like mommy, baby, safety kind of stuff. Really interesting stuff to find in the biological reflection of how our brains work, right?
Fascinating.
We're going to dive a little more deeply into how this dopamine takes over, because what happens is, I actually forgot to say this with it. So when you pick up your phone, your brain is preparing to get that hit of dopamine, because the dopamine is sort of the fastest, most intense high of the three, main pleasure hormones or main happiness hormones. And the dopamine arrives sometimes, but never always. So these intermittent hits of dopamine drive what's been called the dopamine feedback loop. And I think I already heard somebody say it in the room, that the dopamine feedback loop is the same process that drives heroin cravings, right? Yeah,
Yep.
I saw her hand in my view. Who was that? Who said that, Megan?
Rachel.
Say it one more time.
Rachel.
Rachel, great job, Rachel. I can't see her face, but I already know you've got your stuff organized. Oh, and there she is. Hi, Rachel.
I was like, oh, maybe she's not in the shot. I can't get everyone.
It's okay. I understand. We're dealing with imperfect situations, and that's part of life. No problem. So the dopamine feedback loop actually drives cravings for every addiction, gambling, alcohol. I'm a recovering food addict, so foods that are bad for me, dopamine feedback loop drives that, right? So it's just really dramatic. It's just really dramatic to say heroin. Heroin addiction, right? Okay. So I'm
You're our people. I want you to know, like, your energy and everything just matches us, so you're good.
Yay.
We have 12 steppers in the room. It's good.
I love neuroscience. Like, this is really cool.
It's so much fun, isn't it? And it also, I love neuroscience because it takes away all that old shamey, blamey stuff from the old ways of, like, believe and achieve, work harder, grit your teeth. Why aren't you doing better? It's like, maybe shame isn't the way to get people to really change. And I'll be honest with you. I believe that, my job is to help people alter their behavior for the better. And I've never seen shame alter people's behavior for the better. I've seen shame lead to short-term repression and short-term panic that leads to very short changes that don't last. But if we want to create long-term change, we really have to use a paradigm that's not about judgment, but a paradigm that's about really understanding that everything works a particular way in the name of survival, right? Like, our system thinks it's doing its job, so we don't want to tell the system it's not doing a good job. We just want to give the system better tools to have it function at a higher level. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, let's keep going. And I love that you're my people. I'm your people too. Okay, or you're my people too. I'm your people, you're my people. Anyway, okay, so the dopamine feedback loop generates these urges in our body, right? That drive us to seek more distraction. Now, if we resist those urges, our brains produce a brief explosion of stress hormones. So I'm not the first person to talk about this. When I first started talking about this years ago, no one was talking about the dopamine feedback loop. But nowadays there's all these books about, like, dopamine fast, right? And all that. It's like crazy, like how excited people are about the dopamine fast and the I'm gonna release my attachment to dopamine. But I think it's really important to understand the mechanism of how your body seduces you back into this dopamine feedback loop. And part of it has to do with the stress hormones. So you've probably heard of cortisol and adrenaline. There's also vasopressin, norepinephrine. There's actually like 32 others. They lead to all of this nastiness on the slide, right? Negative thinking, your cognition, you're like feeling negative about things, having your cognition actually like jump to strange conclusions, like, oh yeah, I was thirsty, so I lay down, like just weird stuff, memory problems, brain fog, and then a whole host of physical problems as well. And that's another reason why I'm so passionate about spreading this information, is that this is really, it's not just harming our productivity, it's harming our physical health, right? And we want, go ahead.
Is it what was
A
it?
negative feedback loop or a positive?
Is it a negative feedback loop or a positive feedback loop?
So basically the dopamine feedback loop uses both negativity and positivity to keep you enslaved.
Oh, great.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you can continue.
It's all feedback loop.
It's all feedback.
So it's all feedback. It's just feedback working in a way. The truth is, discomfort is not an enemy. Discomfort can be a very positive ingredient in growth, right? You're not going to expand capacity without a little bit of discomfort. The question is, if all we're doing is kind of bouncing between negative stress and positive relief from stress, because that's what the dopamine hit becomes. It becomes self-medication, right? Then we don't actually get a chance to grow. That's the issue, right? And unfortunately, the more we bounce between, untreated stress and self-medication, the more self-medication we need, and the more stressful negative thoughts and compromised cognition drives us to want more and more, right? So that's why addiction.
How would you get off that roller coaster? Is that the next part of this presentation?
What was the first part of that question?
She said, how do you get off the roller coaster?
I have all of the answers. I have all of it. Hooray! I have all of it. Okay. So I've already talked about all the stress and everything. I've gone into enough detail that this all makes sense.
Let's see.
Yeah, so we're good. So first and foremost, I need you to understand that when we're in this, we read something about distraction, we read something about our phones are bad, our phones cause car accidents, right? And we go, oh, I really got to stop doing this. And then as we're driving, we go, I'm going to read this text. I don't really have a problem. I'm just going to check. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh, shoot. Ooh, good. We stopped short. Okay, good. Everybody's cool. Okay. That worked out. It's fine. It's fine. Right. It's like that denial. Right. Sometimes people, you like that I act it all out, don't you, Megan?
I love it. I wish they could see you like when you're in a room, because she's so animated. Like,
yes, I'm like all over.
I love it.
I'm actually wearing the Miss Frizzle dress that I own right now. Speaking of living the learning, because I'm going to my children's school later this afternoon, and I was like, oh, the kids always love it when I wear the Miss Frizzle dress. So yeah, I'm passionate about helping people learn and change, and yeah. Anyway, so something else I find is that folks get very upset when they learn all this, and then they go, it's other people. This is usually my boomers and my older Gen Xers, right? They're like, it's other people. They need to we didn't live this way, blah, 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 right? And I'm like, dude, like you invented it. Like your people invented it. So let's be gentle. I find that the youngest cohort sort of nod along and then just go right back, right? Because they don't actually have an identity of themselves as people without the devices, because the kids who are Gen Zers, I should say the young adults who are Gen Zers, most of them have had iPads in their hand since they could hold things. So they don't really know what it feels like to not have this appendage. And then my working parents, right, who are a lot of my leaders, a lot of my managers, my working parents end up saying, I'm gonna do this. This is so important. And then slowly they realize, like, no, but I'm a mom and I have this. So that I can never miss certain calls or texts also becomes a way that the dopamine feedback loop seduces us back in. And it's just your cortisol, making thoughts play in your head so that you won't change. The other thing you should know, and I promise we're getting to the piece where there's a solution, is that
Ryan has a question.
Oh, I love questions.
I'm gonna come up there.
She's gonna come.
I don't want you to have to regurgitate.
Thank you.
I love that. Thank you, Ryan.
I'm sitting on my phone.
Oh, I was waiting for you.
Now I get to see her beautiful face up close.
Okay, so I had a bunch of neurological tests done in June.
Okay.
We found out that I have ADD with anxiety. So happy little combo. So they put me on Zoloft and Wellbutrin.
Okay.
Together at the same time to fix all this shit.
And how did it help? Did it help?
Anything. So
What?
I just don't have feelings anymore. So like, but it didn't stop that. So will you tell me how to fix it?
Yeah. Will you hire me? Because I have a whole plan.
But yes. Okay, continue. Carry on.
Great. Well, we're done here. No, I'm just kidding. We're gonna have so much fun, Ryan. Okay. I am not a psychiatrist, and I really want you to work closely with anyone who is advising you on medical dosage, because we do have to titrate those things carefully. Spoiler alert, my ex-husband is a psychiatrist, so I know how important it is to honor those titration issues and that kind of thing. And I don't ever want you to think that my work is a replacement for medical advice. But I do think sometimes people, as they're getting great support from their doctors, they can say to their doctors, I'm engaging with behavioral change that's going to, that I really want to see how it goes. And so we can move and groove with that. And I can give you some of the anecdotal stuff I've heard across my clients and my own. I mean, I don't think antidepressants are bad. I think having a floor for anxiety, it can be a really helpful thing, especially for stressed out working moms, et cetera. But if it's not working, it's not working. So we have all kinds of options for you. And I just don't ever want you to think I'm going to tell you to come off a drug without being really mindful. Does that make sense?
For me to stay on my drugs.
Yeah. Right. Just staying on right now.
Okay, great. I just have to be really responsible, like hey, brain chemicals are like really complex, So let's talk about the experts, right? There are a lot of experts out there writing books about behavior, right? Writing books about what to do to fix this. And I have to tell you, I've read all these books. I don't want to be like, they're all garbage, but they're all garbage. Roar. And here's why. They do have some interesting interventions to there's like 3 good ideas in each one. There's great research. There's great data. A lot of the data you saw, I got from their diagnoses of the problem. But in terms of being able to fix, the problem with the vast majority of people advising everyone on these issues is that they themselves live lives of single intellectual professorial careers. They have extremely limited knowledge of what it feels like to be in a high intensity collaborative team situation. And in fact, they didn't ever pursue being part of that. So they don't even begin to know how to manage for distraction and carve out focus in a way that really allows us to work effectively across a team with our prospects, with our clients, with our vendors, because there's just this phenomenology that the vast majority of adults has to work across many people each day. So the time blocking advice is great for someone who's like, I can't make myself stop surfing TikTok instead of writing my paper. But that's not y'all's problem. So the one thing that I think is interesting is that they give a lot of advice about abstaining from as much distraction as possible. But I don't think they realize how much requests from team members and active clients feel like those have to be the exceptions to the rule, because otherwise things don't get done. And the productivity experts give 0 advice for how to organize teams so that people still get what they need, whether it's clients or colleagues. And we facilitate focus. In fact, the productivity ninja guy, Graham Alcott, actually recommends hiding from your colleagues. Like, please, don't let them find you. And I'm like, dude, if you weren't in charge of your own team, because I happen to know that he runs a little, company where he comes in, gives a training and leaves, right? You would get fired if you worked for somebody else and you went and you hid from them. You would just get fired. That's crazy. So what I have to say to a lot of my leaders is the great reward of getting, starting a business or getting promoted is that we now as leaders have a double workday, right? And leaders have to find time on nights and weekends to do their actual work. And by the way, the younger, earlier career generations are also struggling with this issue without even having the additional responsibility of leadership. And it's all just terribly exhausting for everyone. Megan, you're filled with smiles. Tell me what's on your mind.
Yeah, I was just laughing because I see that because I think we have a lot of new agents on our team. And so I was looking at Rachel and I said, I'm so sorry, you're learning from us. And this is me and Ryan. And so we're like, right, because we're training these people and we're just doing our day to day and we don't think about it.
Well, and
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Exactly. So let's start to talk about the solution. Okay. So the key unit here, it's actually team. That's the key unit. And when we create structures that really honor and facilitate the needs of the team, because the team has a need for focus, the team also has a need for mentorship, right? Younger people or earlier career people have a need for mentorship. The team also has a need for clear exchange of information and communication, often across the day very rapidly, right? That's not crazy that you guys would need to be able to exchange information predictably. The team also has a need to be able to deliver results and deliver services to external clients and to get, and to hold vendors accountable. All of these pieces have to go into how we manage a team's approach to focus and communication. So, my goal when I work with teams is to make sure that we achieve a team-based structure that allows everyone to wake up in the morning knowing that their internal questions will get answered promptly, that all the outsiders they deal with will feel very cared for and very served, and that each team member will have access to 2 to 4 blocks. A block can be 60 minutes, 90 minutes, or even 2 hours. 2 to 4 blocks of very pure, uninterrupted focus time every single day. Now, I want to be clear, focus time can mean that you're on the phone, right? It can mean that you're making cold calls or, making outreach calls to your network. It doesn't have to mean that you're sitting and doing a little, look, 2.8 seconds. Did you see that? It happened. I thought I had my phone on mute, but apparently there was an alarm I forgot about. So 2.8 seconds. What was I talking about? Anyway, yes, 2 to 4 blocks of pure uninterrupted focus. And during that focus time, it can be that you're working on a document or that you're working on an offer letter. It can be that you're also engaging in a different activity that's more interactive, but the idea is that you're not being pulled away, unless you want to be. So what are these ingredients? Usually we create a structure where there's a huddle at the top of the day. You have to kind of get to know all this with me as we actually do our work. This is all an intro, of course. The huddle precedes what I call the scramble, because as I get people to kind of get into the experience of this new structure, it becomes kind of a fun thing to help them have very quiet, focused time, very specific, predictable times when they know that they'll be able to communicate anything unpredictable that comes up. And there's also to really protect everyone, make sure everybody gets everything they need, dealing with all of the ups and downs and unpredictabilities of business, right? There is a need for a little bit of controlled chaos. So the huddle is our most formal experience, and our scramble, which comes right after, is our most chaotic experience. They're both essential for setting up the team to be very successful each day. And we do it each morning. Then we have a customized schedule of focus flow state blocks with interruptions that are scheduled as what we call communication time in between the focus flow state blocks. So you see that scheduled communication time. We start to use like cute little jargon names for this. We say calm time, right? And what I find is I can't just give you a time plan and go do it, let me know, because there's a million little ways, a million tiny little things we do that are very tiny and very short, but doing them makes all the difference in the world. Not doing them will just lead you to get sucked back into your dopamine feedback loop, which is very powerful. And so it's really important that I kind of hold your hand as we implement. And at least half of the work is having people say, I don't like this part, Nora, or this isn't working well for me, Nora. And I say, great, tell me what happened. And that's when we start to customize it. And as we customize it, we discover ways to move the time plan around. We discover ways to honor the actual needs of the actual team members. And everyone starts to feel a sense of co-ownership. And I can give you specific examples of different teams and what they came up with, across the time. And of course, everything they came up with, I now use to like say to people, hey, by the way, you have this option, you can do it this way. This team did it this way, blah, blah, blah. And one of the other wonderful things about all this is that it's all optional. And all we ask is clarity of communication. So if you're not available for the 3 calm time breaks, all you have to do is, use the the physical visual time trackers that we have for folks around calm times. And we just say, which calm times are you available and not available for? And you have total freedom. So it's never about slavery. It's always about massive transparency. And people get so excited to be part of such a functional system. It gets really fun really fast. This is for a larger corporation, you start with one team, blah, blah, blah. Here's what it looks like when we're doing sales. So here's the other thing you need to know. So we're going to start moving and grooving with you guys and changing things around. It's going to be great. And you're going to have access. You're going to get access back to your time, and you're going to be more functional, and you're going to have more time with your family. And you're actually going to feel more discomfort and not less. Because all of the distraction and all of the self-medication has actually been covering up opportunities for developing your skills and growing as individuals, as teams, as communication dyads and triads, right? There's all these ways that we as humans have infinite amounts of communication skills, conflict resolution skills, and even business leadership skills that we really can acquire. And all this distraction actually keeps us from it. So that discomfort is our friend. That discomfort is part of what we use as our cue for, and now we get to actually develop very finely tuned skills that lead to really sexy results, right? So with my sales teams, we generally go right from implementing the team time structure to neuroscience of sales tools, which have worked for hundreds of companies and teams, and I love teaching them. And what else do I want to show you here? And we have like really fun case studies, right? Where we have folks who doubled their closed deals in 8 weeks. This particular team out in Northern Virginia, they were closing 8 deals a month when I first started working with them, and working till midnight, about 3 nights a week.
They said they're conversing because they know her, and they
You
were
know,
like,
Kristen, you should call her up because this really
said-
happened.
Ryan said her hair's supposed to be pink and blue
Like a mohawk.
in a moment.
This is a picture from when I worked for her in 2019.
2019. Oh.
So now you see history, Kristen. Kristen is great. I love Kristen. But when I worked with her, I mean, she was at a different phase in her business. And at the time, her team is actually about the same size as your team. And they were closing 8 deals a month and working till midnight every night, or 3 nights a week. And we actually got them to a state where they were able to close 16 deals a month, and we cut their workdays in half. And most of them were done with work by 3 p.m. because it turned out that they all had kids in elementary school. They all had kids. Some of them had kids in elementary school and high school. Some of them had elementary school and toddlers, right? It was a range of ages, but they all ended up having to go to, school pickup kind of stuff. So when I realized that they were all disappearing at the same time and not telling each other, I was like, why don't we just call that school pickup time? Like, let's just call it what it is. And to honor the fact that some of them said, but what about getting back to work and like finishing the Blue Suns? I said, well, okay, so we'll do an optional focus block 4 from 5 to 7. How about that? And you either do it or you don't do it. I don't care. So for the most part, they were done with their work by 3 o'clock every single day. And once in a while, they'd pick up their optional focus block, and they doubled their closed deals. So that was fun. Is Ryan texting Kristen right now? Hey, what do you think of Nora Simpson?
I just sent her a picture of herself and said, "Who are you with brown hair?"
She took a picture and sent it to her and said, "Who are you with brown hair?"
I think blonde. It's blonde, right?
Yeah, it's blonde, but it's fine.
It's broad.
No, I love Kristen. She's great.
They do too.
So the other piece to know about this is that when I teach my tools, everything I've shown you up to this point, other than like the team time structure, everything I've shown you comes from other people's research. When I teach my tools, I'm dealing with this neuroscience-based methodology that I invented, that's really about understanding the brain from the perspective of how our brains actually developed. Because our brain, our entire human history, 500,000 years of Homo sapien history, is a tribal history. And so understanding the group connectedness of the brain is the fact that most neuroscience until about 10 years ago didn't account for it at all. the fact that most psychology didn't account for it at all was just a massive blind spot of a very, very modern Western approach that's very young when we look at the rest of human history, right? And I'm very lucky because I spent time doing village community anti-poverty work in Africa, Latin America, and South Asia as a young person. So I've been exposed to communities that just knocked my socks off with all the abilities that they were able to bring to bear and all the ways they were able to use principles of collaboration and egalitarianism to create incredible business success. It was actually kind of amazing. So when we have more time, a different time, I'll give you more of those stories because they were really cool. So because I did that as a very young person, very young adult, it colored the way that I understand all this research, and it colored the way that I invented these tools and invented these paradigms. And so one of the things that I think we don't talk about enough, but I know that every single person here who feels a kind of connection to sales knows that their, emotions are contagious. You remember this, right, Megan? We feel each other's emotions, and that's not bad. That's not like, oh no, that person is such a downer, right? It's actually that we are supposed to feel each other's emotions because that's how we, in our tribal state, respond well to positives and negatives, right? That's how survival works best for our ancient ancestors. And in fact, our tribal needs go much deeper than just 500,000 years. In fact, all of our monkey and primate ancestors have tribal structures. And if you just ask a normal, regular old primate biologist who appears to have no opinions on human behavior, if you just say to them, hey, what are tribal structures most useful for from an evolutionary survival perspective? Do you want to, Megan remembers, I just saw it play on her face. Do you remember what it's for?
I'm gonna be honest. They're talking.
I'm sorry.
They're talking about monkey names, and I'm really distracted by it.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I'll just tell you.
They were naming the monkeys on your slide.
Say that one more time.
They were giving the monkeys on
You were naming my monkeys?
Yeah.
I love that. So what are my monkey names?
Charlie and
Charlie.
And Chunky.
Chunky. None of them are chunky. What kind of meanies are you guys to these poor little monkeys? They didn't ask to be in this presentation.
Oh, that's cute.
Oh, Chunky Monkey and Charlie Chip?
No.
Oh, for like the Ben and Jerry's flavor. Okay, I'm less offended now. I'm good.
Okay, it's all right. Anyway, so I laughed because they were distracting.
It's okay. It's good to have fun. It's good to have a little contagious joy, right?
Yes.
So the if you ask any primate biologist, they will tell you that the reason that it's useful for monkeys and primates to have tribal structures is that it protects child rearing. So all human experience and all of our ancestors going far back into our history, our evolutionary history, the tribe is a defining part of our experience, if not the defining paradigm of our experience. And once we understand that, we can take all the really interesting psychological research of the last 2,500 years, and we can reshape it from a perspective of understanding our brains as tribal organs. And what I like to help people understand is that all 4 ingredients of tribe, which I sift and sort into these kind of long, treacherous names for the ancient tribal stuff, right? Information about scarce resources. Do we have enough cola nuts for the winter, right? Love and support, or I should say the dry season, right? Because we all come from Africa, right? And so it doesn't exactly get cold in a lot of places in Africa where early humans lived, but certainly there's dry seasons and rainy seasons. And in the dry season, there's less food, right? So I'm such a nerd for this. So, sorry. I love understanding our global human experience. Love and support, bondedness from the tribe, action sequences for results, right? Hunting, gathering, building structures for, physical, like, homes, basically. Very important for real estate, of course. And, all of the shamanic ceremony, ritual, magic, and transcendence. These are all vital ingredients in successful tribe, and all human success is tribal. And so basically, I've given modern business names to these 4 tribal ingredients, and I've called it clarity, support, structure, and vision. And it turns out that they map perfectly onto childhood development too. So, there's like a parenting piece to all this, and a healing piece to all this for all of us who, maybe our parents didn't understand how much they were losing in terms of not having tribal support when we were growing up. And then what we're able to do is we're able to take that tribal understanding of the brain and say all of the psychographic tools that we've heard about our whole lives are simply describing the 4 different ways we process information based on the 4 ingredients of tribal success. And we all have all 4 of the ways in us, but we all spend more time processing and pursuing one or two of those ingredients more than the others, just because of preferences and reinforcement and things like that. So I have very sciencey names for these. I call them analytical, relational, structural, and conceptual. I also have very tribe-y names for these. So you see them, these are the tribe names: inspector, protector, captain, shaman. I feel like it's a hip hop song, and we all have all 4 modes. And we all spike in 1 or 2 modes more than the others. And once we understand what these 4 modes are in our brains, then we start to learn what are the drivers, what are the signals that signal safety or threat or progress or obstacle in each mode. And the signal for I'm safe in shaman mode is completely opposite to the signals for I feel safe in inspector mode. And so we begin to resolve conflicts and misunderstandings very beautifully and with a lot of gentleness, both internally and with our prospects and clients. We begin to have the capacity to curate the journey of our clients and our prospects much more effectively, because we don't have to be like, oh my God, what? I can't believe that guy. Why would he act that way? Blah, blah, blah. Go ahead, Megan.
Biz asked, do you self-govern yourself this way?
Megan, come closer so I can hear you, because I'm really not.
I'll let Biz do it.
Are you able to self-govern yourself like with this?
Are you asking me? Like,
yes, you personally.
Sure. Yeah,
that's amazing. Is there I need a book. This is how you
okay,
you
so
can talk yourself. Hold on. So you can talk yourself out of an anxiety attack, essentially. Like in your brain, because you can know what mode you're in because you know yourself well enough. And then you're like, this is what I need to do to downgrade that because of like neurology. Girl.
So guys, the first tool you learn is how to hack your nervous system. How to hack your own nervous system. Yeah. That's once you start Neuroscience of Sales, once we've gotten the productivity and focus tools in place and we're moving and grooving, the first tool you learn is how to actually hack your own internal experience, because you can't do it for anybody else if you're not doing it for your software, right?
Well, hold my beer. Let me tell you what you can do for other people. You can't do it for yourself, but yeah. I need this for when I have to pick up a sign. For real. I'm not getting what anyone's saying, so I need some translation.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know how
it's all good.
Okay, great. No worries. I don't need every word. It's all good. I've invented tools that help people specifically interact with the nervous system as the defensive system that it is, right? Just to give you a little peek into that, one of the things that I find is one of the most powerful, defining, paradigmatic experiences is to say everything that humans do, every way that humans are, is part of our bodies telling us this is how I survive. So we never say, bad job, what are you doing, to anything inside us or to any behavior. We say, I wonder what the purpose of this behavior is right now. Because right this second, it doesn't feel good. It feels like something's weird, right? Using that paradigm, I've invented very particular, very simple exercises that begin to help you dial into your nervous system and actually have choices inside of it that re-regulate when you're in dysregulation. So I think that's what what is the name of the lady who came from that side of the room?
You're grounding yourself in curiosity. Like you ground yourself in curiosity first with that. I love that.
Yes. And there's really particular exercises that I give people to begin to hack the system. And some of those exercises are exercises I have people do even when they're not in dysregulation, because part of what we learn to do with all of this is we learn to train our system, because as a former theater person, maybe you figured that out about me. I have read the studies that say that the body doesn't know the difference between rehearsal and performance. So it's not about waiting till you're miserable or waiting till you're panicking or waiting till you're enraged. It's about, we give you these simple tools to begin to kind of talk to your nervous system differently and talk to the drivers of your hormones differently than you've ever talked to them before. And we begin to create these paths inside you so that when you get triggered, because you will get triggered, you're able to connect to the new pathways that we're building, and you're able to have access to not just like the one or the early stage exercises, but a lot of the advanced tools as well. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And we have a lot of, I mean, we have a lot. Yeah, I've developed a lot of stuff.
How did you say that again? Your body doesn't know the difference between rehearsal and, did you say not rehearsal?
Your body doesn't know the difference between rehearsal and performance.
Thank you.
That's the habits. That's where you
So that's why we do a lot. There's a lot of stuff I'll ask you guys to do on a daily basis that will feel fine, right? You'll be like, okay, that was lovely, cool, right? It'll be short, right? It won't take a lot of time. But it will begin to very intentionally build structures inside you that become the structures you lean on as you're building yourself your new tools, your new capacities. And just so you know, like, I've been teaching this and I've been refining these theories, refining this tool set, refining how I apply it with people in the field with my clients for years and years, right? You can tell I'm very busy with lots of clients. I love my clients. But only in the last 10 years has the documentation actually come out, because the technology caught up. So these are, this is a drawing of the difference between brain waves when people are in separate social environments and brain waves when people are sharing connectivity. And you can see that in the second picture, when people are sharing social environments, our brain waves naturally begin to synchronize. And that's true whether we're happy or sad or angry, right? Have you ever noticed that if somebody walks in and goes, so, who, blah, 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 right? Everybody now is in intensity vigilance, right? Everyone has different ways of negotiating their intensity vigilance, right? If somebody comes up to my mom, God bless her, may she rest in peace. If someone came up to my mom years ago, right? If they were like, Alice, blah, 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 my mom would be one of those people who was like, well, you know what? Blah, 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 right? She would match it. Right? But there are other people who someone says, you know what? Blah, blah, blah. And they go, ah, right? They shrink, but they're still vibing in that fear-based vibration. They're still vibing, and it's just that they're using a different tool to respond to the fear. So that's why the 4 processing modes, that's what I call them. That's why the 4 processing modes are so important, because even when everyone agrees that everybody's angry or everybody's scared, they're going to be responding with different tools for survival. Make sense? Yeah? Fun time. So here's the last part, and then I'll stop sharing and maybe we can just chit chat for a little bit. I'll stop the recording after this part. So the other piece of all this is that when we build new skill sets, when we build towards really measurable goals, like, I want you guys to set a big goal with me, and I want to get us there in a reasonable amount of time. And I want each of you to have your own individual goals as well, right? But you set that goal and you go, okay, how do I get there? For all humans, if we feel enough discomfort, we'll go back to our comfort zone. And this is the thing, this is the moment, even though I'm sure you've heard a lot of stuff you've never heard from another coach, this is the moment where I'm like, all those coaches who tell you get uncomfortable, they're leaving you high and dry. There's so much more to say after that, because the truth is, a lot of people will say, okay, I got to get uncomfortable to get to my vision. And then they get uncomfortable and they don't know what's next. And when there's enough discomfort, if you go far enough outside your comfort zone, you'll eventually be driven back. And that's why I never ask people to just merely get uncomfortable. I say your discomfort is part of a journey we're going to build using a good enough balance of useful information, warm, positive interaction, and healthy action taken in good enough succession or timing, right? So good clarity, good support that drives actions in short enough periods of time will lead us to build a healthy structure that helps us achieve or blow past our vision. Then we're able to take those moments of discomfort, pain, fear, uncertainty, and doubt that are part of life whenever we're trying to live in that growth mindset and say, hey, this is not a yucky symptom. This is not a nasty side effect that I have to endure as part of the fact that I was born with ambition, right? In point of fact, it's a neon sign indicator that it's time to plug in. I need a good enough combination of useful information, warm support, and action that leads to results if I'm going to get where I want to go. And as we learn to take our discomfort, our pain, our fear, our uncertainty, and our doubt, and we learn to build in that tribal success structure, we discover that not only do we achieve a lot of new skills, but we also have a really great time as we go. Because that's where adventure and exhilaration really live. Yay! So I'll stop the recording here and then we can just like do a little chit chat. Is that cool?